Welcome to the Big Game Hunting Podcast, where we help hunters like you prepare for the big game hunting adventures you've always dreamed of. Now, here's your host, John McAdams.
Hey everybody, this is your host, John McAdams, and you are listening to episode 116 of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. As always, I really appreciate the feedback I receive on the show from listeners like you. Well, I get more requests for episodes on cartridge comparisons than anything else, so with that in mind, I figured I'd put one on the schedule for today on the 6.5 PRC and see how it compares to the 6.5 Creedmoor. Though it's only been around for a couple of years, the new 6.5 Precision Rifle Cartridge, or the 6.5 PRC, made a big splash when it came on the scene in 2018. The 6.5 Creedmoor cartridge has taken the hunting and shooting worlds by storm in recent years, and this has helped ignite a surge in the popularity of 6.5mm/.264 caliber cartridges in general. Well, with the dizzying array of 6.5mm cartridges out there like the 6.5 Grendel, 6.5 Swede, 260 Remington, 6.5x284 Norma, and the 264 Winchester Magnum, many people are wondering exactly what the 6.5 PRC brings to the table that those older cartridges don't already do. That's perfectly reasonable. After all, many people said the same sort of things about the 6.5 Creedmoor. Well, the 6.5 PRC is essentially a Magnum version of the 6.5 Creedmoor, and it offers some definite advantages over the Creedmoor cartridge. Many hunters are still understandably skeptical about the new 6.5 Precision Rifle cartridge, though. So is the 6.5 PRC just the latest fad that will get overshadowed by the next whiz-bang cartridge that comes along? Are the benefits provided by the 6.5 PRC to hunters and shooters big enough to justify making the switch over to the new cartridge? Well, in this episode, I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of the 6.5 Precision Rifle Cartridge in detail. I will also provide some information on how the 6.5 PRC stacks up next to the 6.5 Creedmoor so you can decide if it fits your needs as a hunter. Now, before we get started, we do need to thank the sponsor of today's show, huntingguns101.com. If you love the sorts of discussions like we're having today, then you need to go to huntingguns101.com to receive some specific rifle, cartridge, ammo, and scope recommendations tailored to your specific needs, as well as access to our exclusive Facebook community and some exclusive discounts on certain outfitted hunts with big game hunting adventures in Africa or Canada. Okay, well now let's talk about the 6.5 PRC. The story of the 6.5 PRC began in 2013 when George Gardner, owner of GA Precision, decided to create a new cartridge specifically designed for competitive shooters and hunters. In particular, he was trying to make an ideal cartridge for use by Precision Rifle Series Competition, or PRS, shooters. By this point, the 6.5mm Creedmoor cartridge had really started to take off in the shooting community. However, for all the strengths of the 6.5 Creedmoor, it was lacking in a few areas that were especially important to PRS shooters. During PRS competitions, shooters must quickly engage targets in various scenarios at a variety of ranges all the way out past 1,000 yards. The competition is timed, so first-round hits are ideal, but there's more to these competitions than just shooting small shot groups. The ability to make rapid follow-up shots and quickly correct for misses are also extremely important. Shooters cannot use bullets larger than .308 caliber or with a velocity higher than 3,200 feet per second. For those reasons, flat shooting, medium bore, high velocity, up to a point, and mild recoiling cartridge with a long barrel life have a big advantage in these competitions. Well, not only did Garner want to build a cartridge that met PRS specifications, but he also wanted a cartridge that would fit in a short-action receiver. This is because short-action rifles have a couple of important advantages and are correspondingly very popular among long-range competitive shooters. So what are the advantages of a short-action rifle over a rifle with a longer action length? Well, first, a short-action rifle has a shorter bolt throw and a correspondingly faster cycling time than a standard or a magnum-length rifle action. At the same time, those shorter length actions do also deliver a small advantage in accuracy due to their stiffer action. Finally, proponents of short-action cartridges also argue that a shorter and wider powder column is more quickly ignited by the primer and burns more evenly than a comparable amount of powder in a longer and more narrow column. In theory, this results in improved accuracy for the shorter case. Well, all of these parameters eventually led Garner to decide on a 6.5mm or a .264 caliber round. Garner said in an interview with Outdoor Life, I wanted the highest BC bullet that you can push at 3,200 feet per second in a short action. The 6mm cartridges can be pushed that fast, but they have lower BC. The 7mm have a higher BC, but they can't be pushed at 3,200 feet per second in a short action. The lack of bullet selection in the 25 and 270 calibers ruled them out, so that's why I settled on the 6.5. Now, after deciding on an appropriate caliber, he needed to select a case to serve as a parent to his new Wildcat cartridge. In addition to finding a case with just the right amount of powder capacity, not too little, not too much, to reach his desired performance levels, Garner also ideally wanted to use a case without a rebated rim and without a belt. So this eliminated the 375 H&H and cartridges like the 264 Win Mag and the 300 Win Mag descended from it. The Winchester Short Magnum line of cartridges checked the beltless and non-rebated rim boxes, but they had a little bit more case capacity than he was looking for. Garner initially wanted to use the Ruger Compact Magnum case, itself based on the 375 Ruger, as a parent case. However, you might recall that we were in the middle of a massive ammo shortage in 2013. For this reason, Hornady, which produced the Ruger Compact Magnum brass, declined to work with him at first because they were stretched to capacity making brass for more popular cartridges like the 223 Remington and the 308 Winchester that were the object of so much panic buying at the time. For that reason, Garner ended up settling on the Remington Short Action Ultra Magnum, or the SAUM, as a parent case. Based on the Remington Ultra Magnum, itself descended from the 404 Jeffrey, the new 6.5 SAUM worked pretty well for his purposes, but Garner was not 100% satisfied by the rebated rim case. Fortunately, things did eventually calm down with the ammo panic buying, and Hornady was able to turn their attention to what would become the 6.5 PRC and then redesign the cartridge using a 300 Ruger Compact Magnum, or the 300 RCM case, like Garner originally wanted. Hornady formally rolled out their new 6.5 precision rifle cartridge at the 2018 SHOT Show. The cartridge, along with the 300 PRC, which was also descended from the 375 Ruger, received formal SAMI approval later that year. So typical 6.5 PRC ballistics are a 143 grain bullet at 2,960 feet per second, or a 147 grain bullet at 2,910 feet per second. Both of these loads are designed to minimize bullet drop and wind drift at extended range, but still fit within those constraints that we discussed earlier about PRS shooting. Now, with careful hand loading, it is possible to come very close to that 3,200 foot per second goal Garner had when he first designed the cartridge. Specifically, maximum hand loads published by Hornady show a velocity of 3,150 feet per second with a 143 grain ELDX bullet and a velocity of 3,050 feet per second with a 147 grain ELD match bullet. Both of those loads were obtained using a 26-inch barrel, so your mileage may vary though. Now that is pretty impressive performance, especially from a cartridge that size. So how does the 6.5 PRC stack up next to the 6.5 Creedmoor? Well, the 6.5 PRC factory loads usually fire that same bullet about 200 to 250 feet per second faster than the 6.5 Creedmoor. And just as a comparison, the Hornady Precision Hunter line includes a 6.5 Creedmoor ammo choice shooting that same 143 grain ELDX bullet at 2,700 feet per second, as opposed to the 2960 of the 6.5 PRC. So with that in mind, the 6.5 PRC has a flatter trajectory, more retained energy, and less wind drift than the 6.5 Creedmoor at typical hunting ranges. However, as you'll see in a minute, the 6.5 PRC does have more recoil than the 6.5 Creedmoor. So that's how the two cartridges stack up next to each other in a nutshell. Now we're about to drill down into the details of their similarities and differences though. And as we do that, several especially important factors emerge. So first off, the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 6.5 PRC both fire the same .264 caliber bullets. In fact, Hornady often uses the exact same bullets in factory loads for each cartridge. Both cartridges were also purpose-built for long-range shooting. For this reason, they were designed to use the longest and heaviest bullets available for their caliber without intruding into the powder column. For these reasons, long, heavy for caliber bullets will fit in the magazine and chamber in 6.5 Creedmoor and 6.5 PRC rifles. Both cartridges are known for their exceptional accuracy, and both are well suited for using high BC and high sectional density, heavy for caliber, match grade hunting bullets. Most 6.5 Creedmoor and 6.5 PRC rifles usually have a relatively fast rifling twist rate, quite often about 1 in 8 inches, in order to stabilize those long, heavy, high BC bullets. The 6.5 Creedmoor commonly uses 120 grain, 140 grain, 143 grain, and 147 grain bullets. Now, while the 6.5 PRC can indeed use those same lighter bullets, it is most commonly available with either the 143 grain or the 147 grain bullets. Both cartridges also use a minimally tapered case with a 30-degree shoulder. However, the 6.5 precision rifle cartridge is slightly longer, both in terms of case length and overall length, than the 6.5 Creedmoor. The 6.5 Creedmoor has a .473-inch rim diameter, while the 6.5 PRC has a larger .532-inch rim diameter. So for these reasons, the 6.5 PRC actually has considerably more case capacity than the 6.5 Creedmoor, say around 62 grains of water versus about 52.5 grains. It also has a higher SAMI maximum pressure of 65,000 psi compared to 62,000 psi for the 6.5 Creedmoor. Most manufacturers draw the line between short-action and long-action rifles somewhere around the overall length of the Winchester Short Magnum cartridges, which are 2.86 inches long. Well, the 6.5 Creedmoor has an overall length of 2.825 inches, so it does clearly fit within the generally accepted parameters for short-action cartridges. Other cartridges like the .308 Winchester and its descendants, the .243 Winchester, .260 Remington, 7mm .08 Remington, .338 Federal, and .358 Winchester, are all also short-action cartridges. However, with an overall length of 2.955 inches, the 6.5 PRC exceeds those standards by a hair. So while the 6.5 PRC is marketed as a short-action cartridge, that's not strictly true. Even so, the cartridge does still fit an impressive amount of performance into a compact package. So for many years, gun and ammo manufacturers used the dimensions of some of the most popular cartridges, namely the .308 for a short-action rifle and the .30-06 for a standard or a long-action rifle, as guidelines for designing new cartridges. This is because most of those companies already had lots of equipment on hand to manufacture firearms and ammunition in those same general sizes. For instance, the .270 and the .30-06 are both similar enough in size that it's not too difficult to adapt existing rifle designs for one or the other. The same goes for modifying .308 Winchester rifles to shoot 6.5 Creedmoor. So they were coloring inside the lines for a long time, so to speak. Now, that did simplify things from a design and manufacturing standpoint, but it was also a self-imposed constraint on the development of new cartridges. After all, there's only so much you can do with a cartridge that has a maximum overall length of 2.86 inches. Well, the 6.5 PRC is a good example of a company taking the gloves off and no longer operating within these constraints, and then just designing what they believe is the best possible cartridge that fills a certain need. So that tiny bit of extra overall length does translate into a good chunk of extra velocity, which in turn results in better ballistics. So for instance, Hornady produces their Precision Hunter ammo in each cartridge, like I just mentioned, both of which use the exact same 143 grain ELDX bullet. The difference is that the 6.5 PRC is shooting that bullet 260 feet per second faster. The end result is that the 6.5 PRC has a flatter trajectory with about 8 inches or about 18% less bullet drop at 500 yards. The 6.5 PRC also has about 20% more energy at the muzzle and about 23% more energy remaining at 500 yards compared to the 6.5 Creedmoor. So this episode is focused on the performance of these cartridges for hunting. However, just to give you an idea of the superiority of the 6.5 PRC over the 6.5 Creedmoor at long range, consider this. The 6.5 Creedmoor has over 58 inches, about 23% more bullet drop at 1,000 yards with a 200-yard zero. To further illustrate that same point, consider the supersonic range of the two cartridges. This particular 6.5 Creedmoor load drops below the speed of sound around 1,475 yards, but the 6.5 PRC stays supersonic out till around 1,650 yards. Now, as far as wind drift goes, there's not actually a tremendous difference between the two cartridges. That extra velocity does translate into a noticeably flatter trajectory and more retained energy, but there's just about 1 to 2 inches of wind drift separating the two cartridges out at 500 yards. Right, that's not nothing, but it's not a gigantic difference either. That's not really surprising, though. After all, the two cartridges are using the exact same bullet. So the difference here is entirely due to the 260 feet per second advantage in muzzle velocity that the 6.5 PRC has. Now let's talk about recoil, though. The 6.5 Creedmoor is known for having a relatively mild recoil. However, the 6.5 PRC achieves that velocity advantage over the 6.5 Creedmoor at the expense of about 38% more free recoil energy when they're both used in the same rifle. As a point of comparison, the free recoil energy generated by the 6.5 PRC load that we've been talking about is slightly less than the recoil generated by run-of-the-mill 270 Winchester hunting loads in a rifle that weighs about the same. And yes, that's quite a bit more than the 6.5 Creedmoor, but the 6.5 PRC is hardly a fire-breathing, heavy recoiling Magnum cartridge either. So take all that for what you will. So where do we stand overall with the two cartridges? Basically, the 6.5 PRC is capable of firing the same bullets somewhat faster than the 6.5 Creedmoor. This translates into a flatter trajectory, more resistance to wind drift, and more kinetic energy at typical hunting ranges. If you want to use the 6.5 PRC for elk hunting, then the additional couple hundred foot-pounds of kinetic energy the cartridge provides will certainly come in handy. The flatter trajectory and more resistance to wind drift of the 6.5 precision rifle cartridge can also help with shot placement. So this does make the cartridge a little bit more forgiving of range or wind estimation errors than the 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, unfortunately, the 6.5 PRC does have quite a bit more recoil than the 6.5 Creedmoor, though. And that's one of the big selling points of the 6.5 Creedmoor. Sure, the 6.5 PRC is a little bit more powerful and it does have slightly better ballistics, but I'm not sure how much those improvements matter in the grand scheme of things for a hunter, especially when you consider how much more the cartridge recoils. After all, if I'm going to be dealing with recoil almost on the level of the 270 Winchester, I'd just as soon actually hunt with a 270, but once again, that's just me. Now, while many hunters should be able to handle the recoil of both cartridges without too much trouble, don't underestimate the impact recoil has on the ability of a person to shoot accurately either. Regardless of how well a given person handles recoil, all other things being equal, they will absolutely shoot better with a milder recoil. And a mild recoil also facilitates with spotting misses and taking a rapid follow-up shot, both at the range and the field. So all things considered, though, both cartridges are very accurate, flat shooting, and hit hard enough for use on a wide variety of game at practical hunting ranges. Regardless of whether you're using a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6.5 PRC, no pronghorn, mule deer, or elk will go very far if you put a well-constructed bullet into the vitals. Of the two cartridges, though, the 6.5 Creedmoor is still by far the most popular with hunters. This is reflected in the prices, availability, and variety of factory ammunition and hunting rifles currently in production for each one. So even though the 6.5 PRC does have some advantages on paper, don't count out the 6.5 Creedmoor yet. It's still a great hunting round, and it's a whole lot easier to find 6.5 Creedmoor rifles and loaded ammunition at this point. So if you already have a 6.5 Creedmoor, there's really no big reason to upgrade to the 6.5 PRC unless you just want to. So for most hunters, the 6.5 Creedmoor is probably the better all-around choice if you want to be hunting with a 6.5 millimeter bore to begin with. That said, the 6.5 PRC does give hunters the ability to wring a little bit more performance out of a 6.5 millimeter cartridge without dealing with the more expensive ammo, more recoil, and shorter barrel lives of more powerful 6.5 millimeter cartridges like the 6.5 Remington Magnum, the 264 Winchester Magnum, 26 Nosler, or the 6.5x300 Weatherby. So for this reason, I can certainly understand why someone would want to hunt with a 6.5 PRC, especially if that person didn't already have a 6.5 Creedmoor or something else like a 260 Remington. So the 6.5 PRC is indeed a very well-designed cartridge that offers some real advantages to hunters and fills a specific hunting niche among the various 6.5 millimeter cartridges. While a somewhat surprisingly large number of shooters and hunters have been quick to adopt the new cartridge, the small benefit it offers over more established calibers like the 6.5 Creedmoor probably aren't significant enough to justify making the switch for most hunters. This is especially true considering the lack of 6.5 precision rifle cartridge ammo choices at this point. Even so, the selection of ammunition for the cartridge will likely to improve in the future if the cartridge continues to grow in popularity. So if you're the type of person, like I said, who wants to wring out all the performance you can from a certain caliber, by all means, get a 6.5 PRC, and I'm sure it'll work really well for you afield. Now, if you want to learn more about the 6.5 PRC, I have written a very detailed article, and I will be sure to put a link to it in the show notes if you want to check it out. Now, if you want to join a community where you can have these sorts of discussions on a regular basis, then you need to check out huntingguns101.com. There you can receive some specific rifle, cartridge, ammo, and scope recommendations tailored to your specific hunting needs, regardless of whether you want to hunt deer or pronghorn in the lower 48, moose in Alaska, or Cape Buffalo in Africa. You'll also get access to a Facebook community exclusively for Big Game Hunting Podcast listeners, where you can get regular access to me, as well as lots of other experienced hunters and shooters who can answer your questions and give you feedback. We can talk about whatever you want in the Facebook group, to include bullet and cartridge recommendations. And to top it all off, members receive exclusive discounts on outfitted hunts through Big Game Hunting Adventures. Booking just one hunt will more than cover what it costs to join the group. In fact, you get so much useful stuff from joining the community that I am practically giving it all away, considering what I'm charging for it. So if that sounds appealing to you, head on over to huntingguns101.com and sign up to get started. Now, the fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you're serious about making your dreams come true. Follow me on Instagram @TheBigGameHunter, and send any questions you have about the show to me on Instagram via direct message or via email to john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.
This show may be over, but we have plenty more for you on our website. For more information on today's topic, as well as lots of other useful hunting resources, head over to thebiggamehuntingblog.com. We look forward to having you back for the next episode. But until then, happy hunting.